We have quorum. We can call this meeting to order. The evacuation and public speaker guidelines would be great.
Upon activation of the emergency alarm signal, all persons should immediately exit the building. Please use the exits to the left or right front of the council chamber or the east or west stairwell outside the rear doors of the chamber. Do not use elevators or escalators. After exiting the building, proceed down 9th Street and into the assembly area located in the former Public Safety Building parking lot. Able persons should assist visually in hearing impaired visitors when exiting the building. Public speaker guidelines. Individuals wishing to speak during public hearings and the public comment period are generally allowed 3 minutes to speak. Persons appearing before the committee are not allowed to campaign for public office, promote private business ventures, use language of a personal nature which insults or demeans any person, including comments directed at public officials or staff members that are not related to their official duties, or address or question staff members directly. All questions are to be directed to the committee chair. Failure to adhere to the guidelines may result in speakers forfeiting any remaining time, and further disciplinary action is necessary, which can include barring from attendance at future meetings of the committee for a period of 6 months. And Madam Chair, all members of the committee are in attendance today, and you do have quorum.
Wonderful. Is there anyone here to speak for public comment?
Public comment is now open. Is there anyone present who wishes to address the committee regarding items not on today's agenda? Madam Chair, seeing none and no one signed up to speak virtually before the 10 a.m. deadline, the public comment period is now closed and back to the committee.
All right, committee members, I'm going to make a slight change to the agenda. We're going to allow for our superintendent to go first, and then superintendent, of course, you're welcome to stay for Mr. Hopkins' gun violence prevention presentation, but wanted to yield the time to you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you for allowing me to present first. Good afternoon, Councilmember Jones, Councilmember Breton. Just a few updates for you. At our school board meetings earlier this week, we provided the school board with an update on the new state accountability system for schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia. The state is still in the process of calculating those ratings and has actually decided to engage a third-party vendor to perform the calculations, since it was quite an effort, and we are still waiting for those results to be shared, and we'll happily release them when they are. We also discussed the launch of our year-long process to develop a new 10-year master facilities plan, which will take into account all of our existing buildings, enrollment trends, new development, and look at everything from rebuilding to renovating to consolidation. We also received a report from the Vacant Property Committee with guidance and recommendations as to how to proceed with the few remaining properties that we do have that are not in use on a daily basis by students. And finally, the board passed some modest changes to our collective bargaining resolution to ensure that we are able to sustain collective bargaining in a financially responsible way. I've also brought for you some easy to read summaries of some of our academic success over the past year. So I'll give these to the clerk, and you should feel free to share them with your colleagues and constituents. And if you would like more, I have several hundred. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Cameras. Those are awesome updates. If it pleases the committee, I think what would be helpful is if we chart, I'm looking at Will, is if we chart, when will the facilities master plan be underway?
A year from now.
Completed, but you're going to be going through the process.
We're going through the process, yeah.
Here going on in the go forward, right?
Correct.
Okay. Perhaps we could schedule maybe January, February, an update. Do you think that'd be an appropriate time? Because we'll have some initial enrollment data, maybe some draft proposals on.
Yeah, I would probably a little bit later in the spring, we'll have a little bit more information, but yeah, happy to continue to update you along the way.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. All right. Anything else for Superintendent Cameras?
Don't give me that look.
Well, I'm
I was-
smiling.
I was just gonna say that I'm really proud of y'all. You are doing amazing work. I saw the RPS Rise video yesterday. It really warmed my heart, and just wanted to say, being part of the beginning of a lot of this work to see it actually materializing and coming to fruition is amazing. And I'm just looking forward to continuing all the talks around, what does that look like in terms of modernizing our schools and, our overcrowding and all the things. And because this work is so great, I think it will support all the needs that RPS do have. So super excited to see this. And continue doing the great work that you all are doing.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones. Your thumbprints are on all of the work.
Thank you, Superintendent Cameras. Really appreciate you always being here with us. Great
Of course.
updates. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, DCAO Amy Popovich, would you like to give your update as well ahead of Mr. Hopkins?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Lynch and members of council. The update I wanted to give was on our food distribution last week. So we partnered with Chesterfield County, Henrico County, and Feed More. In Richmond, we gave $100,000 that went to 18 food distribution sites that fed 7,000 households with about 40 pounds of food, which is about 33 meals. And that was all within 1 week. So we're really thankful to Feed More, and also there were so many different departments that helped make that happen, everywhere from finance to the Parks and Rec truck that we borrowed, to, of course, lots of our other human services staff. So I'm thankful for the support in really standing up during a time where our community needed food, and we were able to do that quickly. Also, we were able to make sure that there was lots of sites throughout our whole city, north, south, east, in the middle, west, to make sure that everybody had a site that was accessible to them. We also partnered with RPS to make sure that our kids had access to food as well through their RPS Love Market and through several backpacks that went home with kids throughout the school week last week. So that's my update. Thanks.
Committee members, any questions? Okay. Just one thing to flag for the committee, and we'll have hopefully have some discussion around this. You can track it for our potential December meeting, and that is reviewing our contract with Salvation Army and just looking at the requirements, what they're required to provide, and kind of getting an update on where we are with our inclement weather shelter. Is that?
Yeah, happy to
Okay.
do that. We're already in communication with Salvation Army and with Home Again on renewing both of those contracts. So happy to have further discussion. Yep.
Yeah, I thought they were coming up for renewal. All right, committee members, we will now have a presentation from Mr. Greg, the wonderful Mr. Greg Hopkins, and I am elated to you've been appointed as interim director of the Department of Justice Services, and that is super apropos, given your background, and the timing of this presentation couldn't be more perfect in this moment. If you recall, just to do a little table setting for those out there in TV land and with us today, we hit the pause button on a paper that came before us last week, and that is it's here. We're going to vote on it today, and that is the annual plan of services under the Virginia Juvenile Community Crime Control Act. We started questioning the data. So the numbers looked a little bleak to us up here, and we wanted to know why. What happened, right? Like we noticed that there seemed to be a drop off in services, and perhaps the services that were included in that plan were not as comprehensive as to what we have seen in the past.
Right.
And so we started questioning a little bit about how that plan was going to materialize and ultimately be implemented to the greatest benefit of our most vulnerable youth.
Absolutely.
And so we wanted to bring you here today to talk about big picture, what is going on in the entire space, to really connect, divert, and enable our at promise youth to thrive, who may or may not come in contact with the juvenile justice system or the justice system. So you're here today in your capacity, wearing both hats.
Yes, ma'am.
And with all of your background knowledge. So I just wanted to do a little table setting for the committee, for the audience, that this is a discussion both around gun violence prevention efforts and the plan that we're voting on today. So it's going to be a little dual action here.
Well, first I want to say thank you and greetings, Madam Chair, members of the city of this committee, and greetings, Nicole Jones, Councilman Britton. I'm Greg Hopkins. I'm the interim director of the Department of Justice Services, as well as the director of the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. So today I'm going to give you guys an overview of where we've been since July. We're also going to talk about some touch points when it comes to our juvenile and adult offenders, as well as how this is going to play out as we move forward, specifically working with our most vulnerable folks in our juvenile and adult population. This presentation will give you 5 bullet points. One is the overview of the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, city efforts, our citywide efforts, our GVPI framework, our crime analysis, and a current initiative. One of the things that a lot of localities get bogged down on when it comes to addressing gun violence is that we start to be immediate and reactive, but necessarily we don't look at what our current data tells us and how we should move forward. Given that was one of the reasons why we started this crime analysis, and we're going to unpack it just a little bit for the time that we got today, all right? So what is about the office? It's a citywide leadership initiative to unify and coordinated city of Richmond violence reduction strategies. It aims to implement, coordinate a holistic approach to reducing community violence. It's a multi-partner strategy to intentionally disrupt community violence by investing in prevention, healing, and opportunity creation, improving communications, coordinating among the stakeholders, eliminating silos across the Commonwealth, across the department, and community partners. We see ourselves sort of like air traffic controllers. We coordinate the efforts that's going on the ground, but as well as our system partners, which is in our internal agencies, but our court system. Sometimes we don't necessarily engage those folks. John Marshall Court Building, Juvenile Court at Oliver Hill, and even in Manchester, a lot of our vulnerable folks come through those 3 institutions here in the city of Richmond. So back in the spring, Mayor Vula said, hey, look, we need an Office of Gun Violence Prevention, and we need a unified, coordinated violence reduction effort. And that kickstarted this whole process. When I came on, we had a lot going on, as you can see, through our webpage, through our previous efforts through the Neighborhood Safety Engagement Office under Justice Services. But we had a lot of programs situated on our framework. During that time, we said, hey, look, let's kickstart this process by doing a strategic evaluation of these programs situated under the existing gun violence prevention framework, which is run by VCU, and they're currently wrapping that up now. We did assessment surveys, interviews, as well as those programs that were more youth-oriented programs. We do have a few adult programs, and as we go through this slide, you'll realize that we don't have enough adult programs for those individuals that are actually involved with either a victim or offender of violent crime. And then started in the end of August, we started looking at what did our crime analysis tell us. Normally, before you start this process, it's imperative that localities look at a deep dive of who are our people coming into the system, what our victims and offenders look like, and what are some of those touch points in our juvenile system. So myself, along with DOC, Department of Juvenile Justice, Department of Justice Service staff, and especially RPD, we went back 5 years, 5 years to look at, our trends and our data for the city of Richmond, and it sort of kind of paint the picture where we need to go as we look at addressing gun violence reduction strategies. Then second is that the last one is that we start focusing on our strategic partnership development. We already had some partners in place, Real Life, RVA League for Safer Streets, our community mediators, as well as the Trauma Healing Response Network, along with the Bridging the Gap program at MCV. How do we lift them programs up and bring them to scale based on with the resources that we had at our disposal? So what does the citywide coordination effort look like? Every month, on first Tuesday of the month, our Gun Violence Committee steering committee meet. This steering committee has been in effect for probably over 2 years. Their goal is basically to look at how we address our efforts and align our efforts. It's sort of been stagnant, I'd say, for the past 12 months. this last meeting, I think we started it off back in September, and that was unpacking the problem crime analysis. Our committee members are made up of representatives from RPS, Richmond Police Department, VCU, MCV, RBHA, RRHA, DSS, MCV, Department of Parks and Rec, Department of Criminal Justice Services, Department of Health, Richmond Sheriff's Department, and lastly, Attorney General's Office, along with some of our community-based organizations as well. This group, I think, is important as we start, moving forward with the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Their initiative is going to be looking at diving into our data as we move forward and reviewing it each month, as well as looking at our incidents of homicides each month. But additionally, what I think is one of the important charge of this committee is to oversee our Safer Communities project funding that we currently have. So what is the framework? This framework has been in existence for over probably 3 years. We started this process in the city of developing these 6 bullets. If you look at other cities that's been successful gun violence prevention strategies, there is credible messengers, there is training quality assurance, there is positive post-incidents review, crisis intervention, homicide shooting reviews. We can't tackle it all in 1 month. But with strategic leadership based on the fact that we do have a steering committee and leveraging technical assistance on a national level, I think we can also make a huge dent in some of our issues that we see in our community. Right now, we're standing up probably 4 of these 6 pillars, and there's a lot of room and improvement for moving forward. All right, so let's go a little bit deeper into our crime analysis. One of the things that we notice is that the tail of the tape is that we have a narrative of crime in Richmond, or crime around the country, is that when things happen, we always default to what are some of the normal, I'll say, stories behind a violent crime in the city of Richmond. Oftentimes in this year, when we hear Chief Edwards talk about what we're seeing, is that we're seeing a whole different trajectory change of crime. Of our firearm homicide circumstance has changed over the years. It's coming out of COVID, it definitely changed. Majority of our homicides that we see, 28% of those are arguments, followed by robbery, retaliation, and domestic assaults. Majority of what we see creeping up is our domestic cases. Our age of the individuals that participate in the crime has changed dramatically. We would call that the age crime curve. The age crime curve is something sort of, we bent it, prior to COVID. We always had young individuals that we thought were surrounded by other young individuals, creating what we call an era of crime. That's not the case now. The average age of a victim is 32. Average age of a homicide offender is 29. As of today, that changed. Right now, starting, I think, since January, the average age of an offender is 30 years old. Victim is 35. So that age group is progressing as we start moving into different territory of our social environments, economic environments, and it has a lot to do with what we see now. If you look at the last 4 homicides in the city of Richmond, a lot of those individuals over the age of 30. Prior offense is key. What we noticed that the majority of our offenders going back 5 years had either previous weapons violation or drug distribution. Our victims had property crime, but they all had touch points of some sort of within our local criminal justice system. The question is what we do when them individuals came to us and how we service them to keep them from a position of reoffending. All right, this is our juvenile history. Now, the other piece of the crime analysis was that we not necessarily looked at our the types of offenses and the types of individuals committing the crime, but we looked at the who. Who are the people coming through our juvenile system, and who are the folks coming through our adult system? And right here, you see that older teens make a majority of our crime with juvenile cases. We didn't have that many cases coming through the court in the last year. The year before that, we had 80. But the kids that are coming through the court system are committing more crimes that we consider more violent. Say rewind back pre-COVID, you have an individual that comes to the court system. Their first point of contact may be a chance case or a simple assault. And then the progression start happening if they don't get the resources that they need. So we have simple assault return to aggravated malicious wound or unauthorized use. Nowadays, the individual's first point of contact is malicious wound or possession with intent to distribute, aggravated malicious wound with a firearm, in some cases, attempted murder or murder. This is concerning not just in the city of Richmond, but all across the Commonwealth as we start looking at how do we better utilize resources for those high-risk, high-need youth. And I'll talk about that moving forward. Let's move forward. Again, our misdemeanor felony assaults and misdemeanor weapon and larceny were probably the biggest, most serious incidents of violent, not crime, but what we saw in petitions in the juvenile court. Our felony assaults are running neck and neck with our weapons. All right, let's talk about adult data, and I'm trying to run through this real quick. The adult data paint a similar situation, similar story. Assault and battery charges remain high. Firearm charges rose from 23 to 24. That's a 90 from 9 to 115. Data suggests target violence intervention efforts and growing engagement around domestic related offenses on all groups. What's noticed is that we still have the same situation going on in our adult arena that we have in our juvenile, that our assessment, the key tells us what is actually to paint the picture with our offenders. They have issues of substance use or mental health challenges that go unaddressed after they get put on probation. So one of the things that often is neglected when we talk about individuals that come through our system is addressing criminogenic risk factors or risk factors. To effectively prevent acts of gun violence is critical. Understand and addressing underlying criminogenic risk factors. These 8 bullets are antisocial behavior, substance use, education, anti-peer, family relationship, pro-social activities, and employment. So if Greg Hopkins go into the juvenile court, we are assessed. Each kid gets an assessment. Either they have a pre-assessment or have a full assessment. That is the youth assessment screening instrument. It has 10 domains. And those 10 domains address those criminogenic risk factors. If individuals have mental health or violent history in one of those 10 domains, those are static risk factors. We can't change those. But if there's 2 flags in mental health or violent offense, that's an alarm at the gate to say, hey, this kid needs additional service. Either he has been exposed to prior traumatic events in his life, or there's some serious mental health deficiencies that never went unaddressed. So it is key that we pay attention to our assessment data, specifically on adult and juvenile offenders.
Mr. Hopkins, I asked this question last time. If you don't have the data point, that's okay. But do we have an idea of how many, just looking at the risk factors, of how many of our youth are dual involved, dual systems youth, meaning that they're either currently in foster care or have been involved in child welfare?
Crossover youth?
Crossover youth, yeah.
I don't have that data on me right now, but we can get it for you. The DSS and DJJ do capture that data.
I think that's a good canary in the coal mine and a good
Absolutely.
indicator for us to track, so that, I mean, that's a direct reflection on our DSS and how well, we're doing on both the prevention, child welfare prevention side, and, what we're doing for our foster youth, because we should be seeing, hopefully that's a low number, but in any case, that'd be helpful if we started tracking that.
So I say that to say, going through that data, these are ways we can stand these things up. That's those multidisciplinary teams. I've met with the juvenile court judges, the circuit court judges. Everybody's been screaming about it. Hey, how do we get everybody around the table to address these high-risk, high-need individuals coming through our system? We had a stand in place prior to COVID. It was a stand in practice. And, when things get down, detention center numbers go low, our caseload go low, people take the foot off the gas and say everything's going smooth. Our juvenile population dropped probably about 40%. But notice that when we jumped out of COVID, it just went crazy. And everybody said, hey, what do you do? So when frustration meets exhaustion, what happened? You get desperate. And we get desperate and start coming up with quick remedies to a juvenile crime that really didn't have any effect on what we see. How do we stand up our community-based violence intervention initiatives and our crisis response? We currently have a couple of partners that we working with now, like Real Life doing a pilot focused deterrence program with focusing on Fairfield and Mosby Court, working with our Kids and Inspire program with RPS. Our Trauma Healing Response Network is working with our crisis response protocol. The goal is to leverage national TTA to come in and lift those 2 areas up. Last is that I think this is I love this one because it's our CEPTED process. Mr. Barnes is here. The CEPTED initiative is something that came out of a request from Chief Edwards, that when we have hotspots across our city, we follow up with assessment. And here's a list of those that we have done so far, but it gives the community an opportunity to leverage resources, CARES Act money, enterprise funding just to make those necessary improvement within your business or your community, but it also builds opportunity to build trust with our community partners to see the city is doing addressing these needs in the community. The biggest piece about this thing is our Safer Communities grant. Richmond is one of 4 localities that receive earmark funding from the state. This funding was developed to look at holistic approaches to address gun violence. This is an earmark. It runs 12 months. So we got a short term to make it happen. Our primary partners is the YWCA, who's pretty much invested in survivor services, victim services. Next up, RVA for out of school time for our kids, focusing on 13 partners in those 7 localities, 7 sites across the city. We have several City of Richmond partners. One included is RPD, Office of Immigration Refugees Engagement, and OCWB and Justice Services. And then Sarah, lastly, is our peer support specialist services for our behavioral health and mental health docket. So just want to share you an update. We did a little 1-2. You can see Chief right there holding Stop the Violence sign. Back in September, Falling for the Culture event in Jackson Ward, it was a huge success. We have a couple of new initiatives starting in the end of this month, which will be our workshops for wellness and dealing with conflict and family loss and seasonal depression disorder, which will be held in 3 locations across the Commonwealth, the city. That is Randolph Community Center, Police Academy, and Southside Peter Paul Development Center. And we will be doing additional 3 on the south side as well. Any questions? Sorry about it. I ran through that a little fast.
Hi.
Hey.
I don't necessarily think I have a lot of questions, and I feel like it's still too early to ask a bunch of questions. So I want to be, very transparent that I think some of this work, we need to give it time to see. You're new now, moving into another role. So I want to really not go on what was, but really think about what is. So I really want to take this opportunity to, one, say thank you for presenting, and then, continue to track, all of what you presented, because I do think that, like you named, we can't do it all at the same time, but some of these pieces, I'm a little concerned about, I don't really necessarily know about, is what I should say. And so when we specifically the SAFER grant, we have huge organizations, we talk about $3 million in gun violence prevention. It would be helpful to know what those programs or what those activities are, because I've seen a lot of events, but I haven't seen a lot of, I'm just being honest, but I haven't seen a lot of hands-on, process phased approach that is going to get us to our goal, and not necessarily a number, but like get us to our goal. And so I want to be clear again that a lot of it was piecemeal because, you were outside first, then you came in. And so I want to really reference that with the expectation of what we would hope to have seen today. And so I know that that's why we're still
we course correct with Safe Communities. We want to make sure we balance out engagement and programmatic stuff as well, because too much engagement don't necessarily equate to activity.
Yeah. And so I think, but what would be helpful is just some more input, and then maybe some like where we are, and then looking at how we plan it, even with all the partners, because I think it's a lot of partners. And again, I'm just always big on, in all those partners, like how many people are we actually serving? Yeah. So
that's the goal of the steering committee, to put it is to make sure we're doing what we say we're going to do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a similar request, which is to help me understand this ecosystem of programs.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of them, and the fact that there is now, to coordinate them is going to be helpful. I would imagine like a dashboard or a spreadsheet of here's the name of the program, here's the amount of funding it's getting, how much of that funding is city funding versus a grant, what is the stated goal of this program, and what are the measured success of how it's doing. I can almost imagine or ask if a year from now, there would possibly be fewer programs because we had figured out which ones are working best and focused more of our resources on those. Actually, interesting. I did hear you say something about during the analysis that there were not enough programs for adults. Maybe
Yeah,
I meant.
so-
What did you mean when you're saying that?
Yeah, we've done a deeper dive into like juvenile programs for the past 5 years. And a lot of it came stemming from our We Matter RVA grant that we received back in 2021. We saw an influx of kids coming into our juvenile system with some real tough crimes. That's when we had went up to 90 homicides. So something had to be done. And so we started that investment with out of school time and positive youth development, which paid off. We've seen a significant reduction in kids participating in the juvenile justice system. However, what happened, as I mentioned earlier, is that we started to see a change in our participants, and that's those adults. So then we start cataloging what resources we have. We have a lot on the juvenile end, and there may be some that's on the adult end that not necessarily have been engaged in our our adult criminal justice system, but we haven't brought them to the scales that same framework to the capacity that we did on the juvenile end. The VCU study will give us a blueprint as we move forward to look at how we can do work on on the adult end. But just to get back to your question about data analysis, how we capture resources across the city, we are building out what you call a data dashboard, gun violence dashboard, that will be a little bit more transparent, showing those resources in the community, how many people they serve, and hopefully we can build upon it as we go forward with some performance measures as well.
And actually, one thing, since I have you, I'm really interested to know that we've often had gotten advocacy for particular programs.
Yeah.
There's a program in Hopewell that many folks were hoping we would replicate. Another program in Baltimore. When it comes to programs like that, would you say, and if you know which ones I'm talking about, that we have an equivalent program that is meeting those goals,
So
what is our strategy for
so
meeting
the
those
strategy-
similar goals?
So we look at Hopewell, for example, with the height of their gun violence, they were up to 9 homicides. Then it went down to 6. They employed GVRS, which is Group Violence Reduction Strategy. Then they were able to break it down to 3. That's a 50% reduction. And folks was like, yeah, that's great. But we're looking at 2 individual families that were having an argument. It lasted over 2 years, resulting in 3 homicides. We can't statistically say the same thing for the city of Richmond. We can't compare Richmond population to 22,000 people and say you need to employ that type of strategy when David Kennedy, who's at St. John's University, who's started the whole GVRS and National Network Safer Communities with Sasha Cotton, they will tell you 70% of your homicides have to be driven by group gang violence to really see a successful reduction if you employ GVRS. Here in the city of Richmond, we have multiple drivers, and the leading one is arguments. We don't have anybody crip walking down Broad Street. It's not that much gang. I'm sorry. It's not that much gang involvement. But at the end of the day, we still have to address that. And that's one of the reasons why we invest in that pilot with Real Life. Real Life went through the Life Coach Academy life coach training with National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform.
No, that's really helpful. And to understand that the pattern we're seeing here is, people with poor impulse control with access to weapons, right? Who are just, and all the things you can do to intervene and improve the likelihood that they will be in a better place and not find themselves making a mistake. That's very helpful. I also did want to just praise you for the program of the CPTED assessment where you flag these spots that are in need of investments. I think that's a wonderful program of finding opportunities to bring our cross departments to focus on these areas. If you find that departments are not moving quickly enough, let us know and we'll make some phone calls, because I think that's such an important way to focus resources on the departments the spots in the city that need it most.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do have one question. On the We Matter program, you mentioned that as you all were doing that work, you noticed a reduction in crime, and the crime is now with more of like an adult level. So my question is, was that program created for intervention or prevention? Because from what I understand, the young people that are in those programs are not necessarily involved in the juvenile system. So how do we determine whether or not or we can say that we've seen a reduction when those young people haven't even been involved in the system So is it prevention or intervention?
So I'll say prevention. So it's two things, proximity and alignment. So when we start unpacking those individuals that participate in programs, yes, prevention work, but they do have offsprings that enter the juvenile justice system. So it's sort of siphoned out those high-risk individuals and moderate-risk individuals or low-risk individuals. So those individuals those juvenile that participate in those programs, I would say they were ones that were on the cusp prevention wise. And so that kind of cipher what we will see if we will look at our diversion cases. When you start unpacking that and going down, it's a whole lot of data mining, but we will see where we have impact with those prevention programs. I would say intervention programs is always going to address criminogenic risk factors. Those are going to be those ones where you're looking at social attitudes, social skills, and how we think and triggers. And those are some investments in those programs. I'm not sure the list of individual programs that we invested in, We Matter. But if you need some information, we can get back with you.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you named. And I think I'm just very big on like clear. And I think we need to stress that because when we use the term positive youth development and we're saying that for out of school time, but we're not saying that this program is designed for prevention out of the criminal justice system, that's two different conversations. And it sounds like we're just giving funds for positive youth development as opposed to really trying to treat a system as you name. So I do think that there should be some clarity around that in terms of if the program is going to continue and just speaking to the nature of why we're doing it, because if we already have identified the risk and we know, then we should be saying that, not necessarily couching it under positive youth development.
And that's I think those kids, as talking with the judiciary and the court service unit, a lot of the programs that were afforded to that population necessarily didn't touch the surface of We Matter. So you got to understand that the court service unit is a state-run entity. And sometimes they utilize their cadre of programs, but we don't have any idea who these folks are working with our kids. And so now engaging this conversation with the courts and setting up MDTs, we can catalog these programs and see if it's best fit for our community.
Yeah. I mean, just to piggyback on that, when we think about when I look at my own community, and I'm thinking specifically because I've got two of them on here on the SEPTED list. When I think about the challenges that we have in getting youth engagement and participation from the youth that are actually participating in or adjacent to criminal activity today right now, we are having a heck of a time. It's not the kids who are participating in our Next Step programming and at least what I've seen in We Matter, and I know like at least 3 of those programs in my own district, it ain't the kids we're really talking about.
Absolutely.
And it's a really hard population of a really hard group to engage because they are these are kids that are hurt and they're going through a lot of trauma. And I think if we're going to really do something right and look at this plan again, what the mechanics of the multidisciplinary team are going to be, the underpinnings of what, makes this work. Because getting around a table and saying, these are our youth that are popping up on the radar, are at risk, what's going to be the intervention? Like having that group of folks sit around the table, somebody from RPS, somebody from DSS, courts, that the whole team, like that's going to make it tick.
Absolutely.
Like I'm so appreciative that you're bringing that back. Yeah. But if we can't turn around and say, I need conflict resolution, or we need family-centered treatment, or multi-systemic therapy, or whatever the service is that we know is going to be the intervention that helps heal that trauma and that hurt. Like if we can't turn around and divert people into actual, like no kidding services, then I don't know how effective we can be. I mean, we've got to have those services out in the community. And I'm deeply concerned about the state. The state is going to flip the switch here and turn off every single community-based mental health rehab service that we have. Intensive in-home, going away. Therapeutic day treatment, going away. Mental health skill building, going away. I mean, those argue about whether those are empirical based programming and services all day, but at least it's something. And I am concerned that we do not have the network of providers and services in our community to appropriately do what you're talking about, which is intervene. And you've got you got to have therapists, you got to have clinicians, you've got to have actual, no kidding. I mean, after school programming is great,
Yeah.
but that is not really doing it.
And I think we have sort of came to that crossroad that, a lot of these programs are, they're good programs for engagement purposes, and they do have a place. But we do have a population of individuals that we call, they are not the amenable ones that nobody want to work with, or they're the ones that's going to, throw the paper in the classroom, walk out and curse you out. And sometimes they find themselves at the Oliver Hill building, next door at the Oliver Hill building, our juvenile detention center. And so that's the opportunity for individuals to really start working on our young and most vulnerable individuals when we do have them in our environment. So
And just, I think that stipend that comes with it, right, is an incentive for young people who have been in the system when you can't find a job, or like that's part of their challenge. We could maybe look at something around that I think would be super helpful in terms of incentivizing, because as my colleague is saying, we're incentivizing, but we're not incentivizing the folks who actually need it.
absolutely.
Well, we all got our work cut out for us. Other than that, Miss Lincoln, how's the play? In any case, we appreciate you, and we appreciate your really thoughtful approach and bringing some of the things back that I think were, made us tick and were successful, and look forward to having you back again with the status update. So, colleagues, any other further discussion before we move into the papers?
Crime control.
Madam Clerk, with that, if you can read our paper into the roll.
The paper for consideration is item 1, Resolution 2025-R041, to approve the City of Richmond Plan Services under the Virginia Juvenile Community Crime Control Act. That paper is before the committee.
Members of the administration, would you like to present? And then we'll move to public comment.
Again, I'm here to talk about our VGA Crime Control Plan. This plan is a plan that's developed by our court service unit, Department of Justice Service personnel, the judges at the Juvenile and Domestic Relation Court. What you have before you is a plan of a host of programs that we intend to implement. As we mentioned at the last hearing, there were some concerns about some of the programs and the utilization of programming and those kids that were diversion eligible. Since that time, we've worked with the juvenile court, met with all the court judges to see how we can actually make a formal plan to really move forward. Now, we have the opportunity to make any necessary changes up to 50% of that plan without going back to the state board. I'm confident that we can execute a program that's going to deal with that, not just the protective fact, not just with public safety, accountability, but more importantly, competency building. We see decision points on that plan. That's a program that's going to deal with social attitudes as well as triggers and cognitive development of our young folk. As we start looking at risk factors and those kids that are diversion eligible, that's our opportunity where we see a prime investment. Oftentimes, and I've spoken with the juvenile court judges, is that we get to a point where we start seeing a series of offenses coming into our courtroom. So we come up with shoplifting programs, weapons reduction programs, you name it. But those programs don't necessarily talk about why these kids are actually picking up a gun or stealing. And we have to go back to what we know what's worked. The Department of Juvenile Justice published that data resource guide every year, December. Pick up that guide and look at 13th District Court Service Unit. It'll tell you everything you need to know about the kids that we service in here in the city of Richmond. After reviewing that information with our court judges and our court service unit, I believe we're on a pathway forward to make a successful program and plan. So I'm just, hoping that we get your endorsement today as we able to make this, right this ship.
Well, we have lots, I'm sure, discussion. But before we get into that, Madam Clerk, is there folks here today to speak for or against the ordinance?
Is there anyone in the chamber who wishes to speak in opposition to this paper? Is there anyone in the chamber? You can come forward. State your name for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Jones. What's your name again, sir? Mr. Greg Hopkins. You say one. First of all, I'd like to say, Miss Stephanie Lynch, Miss Nicole Jones, I appreciate you all. You all seem like you care. And not only do you care about the actual effects, the budget, the actual results. That's my problem why I'm speaking up today. Your partners in both of the discussions that you're bringing up today, is RPD, Richmond Police Department, one of your partners? And that includes all what, 4 precincts? Okay. At that point, prevention is one of your topics, correct? Right.
Sir, when we're speaking, can you address the committee? I'm sorry. It's just
I apologize about that. I have one of my issues with the Richmond Police Department. I guess it would have been a question for him, but you're saying address you all. I have a problem with tyrants within the police department. All of them not bad. I have no issue with all. It's specifically the ones that, if I was talking to him, I would ask him, how does he feel if how would he feel if, or would he be aware that third precinct received the best precinct in the area over the past, I'll say within the past year or so? He should say yes, that third district received the best precinct. Now, from that point, I would ask him what's his response to if he knew that Detective Ryan Bailey of third precinct was suppressing evidence and refusing to investigate multiple crimes because of prejudice, including identity fraud, theft, identity theft, fraud, and grand larceny. You're saying address you all, so I can't ask him that. Go ahead.
and sir, you've got to speak to the paper. Try to keep to
Let's speak to the paper then. We need, one of his other partners is the JDR. I have way more.
You have 30 seconds.
There's a lot of corruption going on within the JDR, a lot of tyrants going on, a lot of tyrants within the JDR, a lot of suppression. There was over 40 show causes thrown out within the Spotsylvania County. Now, I am a constituent of Richmond. I am aware of the tyranny that's going on in Spotsylvania. It does not concern you all, but by the time my issue has been going on and spreading between Richmond, Spotsylvania, and Fairfax, and I can point out corruption between Richmond, Spotsylvania, and Fairfax.
That is
I
your
feel
time. Thank you.
understood, and I feel that someone needs to do something.
Thank you for coming down. I know it's takes a lot of courage to do public speaking and speak to a paper. We we appreciate it. Yep. All right, Madam Clerk, anybody else here to
Is
speak?
there anyone that would like to speak in support of this paper?
All right, heard. All right, with that, public comment is closed. Bring it back to committee. So couple of questions. And this is just, I'm gonna, show my own lack of knowledge here. So how the providers that are currently providing some of these services, and to your point, it's kind of like we've made up some things, some programming as we've gone along, it sounds like. How are they getting paid? Like, are they contracted directly in with the courts? How does that work?
No, they contract directly with the city. So those individual programs that are housed under justice services that we actually execute, those are programs that our staff execute. I think there's probably like 2 or 3 that's on the plan. Don't have it in front of me, but that's contracted out. And so they are invoiced to the city based on their performance delivery. And so that process is transparent with the court service unit. So anything like invoices, status reports that go to the probation officer and even to us go straight to both entities, the state and the city.
And so hypothetically, we
Mhm.
put out an RFP to procure these services, or how do we wind up with this
It
list?
depends on the threshold. So, we follow the procurement process. If it's over a certain threshold, yeah, we put out an RFP. If it's under a certain threshold, then we can contract directly with that individual service provider. There is a RSA service provider that the state also, on top of crime control, contract with to bring additional services. So this is not the win all, all the programs that individual program probation officers access, but it is a part of the local plan.
So there is an opportunity when you all put out a new RFP to think differently about the
Absolutely.
types of services we're gonna
Absolutely, absolutely. But we can't do it alone. We do have to have the endorsement of the judiciary and the court service unit. But this is an opportunity. Every week we meet on Fridays to have a discussion of all programs and the individual kids that come into the court system and what services they can go to. And that's between justice services and the court service unit. And monthly we meet with the judges on a need-to-need basis based on what we see in the trends to keep them, and just to be transparent at what's going on.
Okay, go ahead, Nicole.
Two questions. Y'all got stuff. So my first question is, I think you answered it. It was like, what are we looking for in a partner?
Mhm.
But my second follow-up to that is, are these programs specific to already existing programs, or are these programs, when we talk about the diversion,
Yeah.
is it, and we're looking for a partner, are we integrating these young people in existing programs, or is that provider creating a specific program for those young people?
So that's the challenge. I think that's a good question, because oftentimes we do have kids that are situated in certain programs, and we do course correction, and in the middle of that, we let them, service their service out of an existing program and then put them back in. The goal is not to program a kid to death. So individual service plans is developed based on kids' risk and need. And the average length of stay of individual and local probation is at 364 days. So my thing is we don't want to just continue to overburden kids. That way we have a situation where you have a response burst and they wind up committing additional crime once they get free. Getting back to your original question, I think that's an opportunity that we have to continue to have those discussions with the court and go back and point them back to the data resource guide to say that, we don't want to overburden individuals based on what we believe they need, but what they really need based on their risk levels.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Mhm.
And then the follow-up to that is, in terms of funding.
Right.
So if we are, like, some of these programs have 10 young people. I see some where these are 12-week programs,
Yeah.
15 sessions, but per our last, one is like 6 young people, but per the last time we were here, I think the number was like very low,
Yeah.
4, maybe 3.
Yeah.
So in terms of funding, how are we funding these partners? Are we giving them, like, say if we put out an RFP for $20,000, but you're only getting one student?
Yeah.
How are we
You
tracking?
get paid based on what you service.
Say it again?
You get paid on based on what you serve.
So if you serve one kid,
Absolutely.
but the RFP may have
Yeah.
them for something else. So where's the rest of the money?
We'll have just to go back on.
Sorry.
All right, you cut me off. But on a crime control plan, there's a category called specialized services. We usually leave that up to the court. So individuals, say for instance, Greg Hopkins at the court need respite care, needs some type of service that's not on the plan, you can use that extra resource or that extra money to actually put them in like a group home, or if they need to do an assessment, sex offender assessment, stuff like that. So we try to keep that catch-all when we don't spend money for the court and the judges to have that opportunity to do that.
I would say, I bet you probably find yourself needing to tap into that quite a bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question was with respect to, this particular plan, this particular funding request.
Mhm.
I know we're talking about, the possibility of, improving our services, improving our outcomes. is this the right plan and budget level to be approving today, right? If we are seeing that we may have opportunities to improve our outcomes or improve our allocations, should we approve this plan, or is there some better plan that we should consider that possibly has larger funding amounts or something like that?
Yeah, unfortunately, the plan has already been approved by the state. And so right now, what we have to do is get the local endorsement. That's the second piece. As I mentioned earlier, we can always change up to 50% as long as we don't exceed 50% of the plan. So if we look at 3 programs, say for instance, hey, look, the judge say, hey, look, we can do an RFP to combine just one program that can service all these multiple needs. We can definitely do that as long as we don't exceed 50% of that plan. So right now, we do have an opportunity to move forward and do some real good things.
Actually, can you clarify what it means to exceed 50%? Does that mean to go over, like a total of
Over the plan.
150%?
Absolutely. So right now, I think half of the plan is like 347. If we want to make some changes to go up to 400, then we have to go back to DJJ board to get approval.
I see. Thank you.
We can make some edits. And council members, I don't for, they may take what we have to say for a grain of salt, but if you could take back to the judges and the folks that are working on this, I think what I've seen and kind of what we're alluding to here is there really needs to be some robust evidence-based practices in place and programming in place in our communities. And by that, I mean, we got to know, like, all right, if we go put out a $250,000 contract, we want services that are delivered by licensed clinical social workers. They're doing real therapeutic interventions with real programming. And we're not saying that the programming happening here is not. Broken Men I see on here, they're awesome. I mean, we love them. Girls Circle, great, but we are being thoughtful, intentional, and a little bit probably pain in the behind about this for a reason, because this is life or death. This is life or death for these youth. And based on the decisions that we make, contingent upon the services that we put in place, that could change the course. That could be the difference between not changing the course of that kid's life and changing the course of that kid's life. So with that.
Yes, we thank you for all of this today. I know this was really robust, but that's what we wanted. That's one of the reasons why we continued it. And because we know that the plan was previously created and already approved, we believe in you. We believe that you're going to really work to do what we're asking. And so with that, I make a motion. I move that we forward this to council for approval.
I second.
Madam Clerk, call the roll.
The committee is voting on the motion to forward item 1, resolution 2025-R041 to council with a recommendation to approve. Mr. Breton?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jones?
Aye.
Chair Lynch?
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Thank you all. Appreciate you.
All right, thanks, Mr. Hopkins. With that approval, the minutes.
The minutes to be approved are for October the 9th, 2025, for the Education and Human Services Standing Committee meeting held at 2 p.m. If there are no amendments or corrections, then those minutes will stand approved as presented. Those minutes have been approved. Thank you.
Committee members, we'll now do our staff report. Mr. Perkins, what you got for us?
Thank you, Chair Lynch. Just wanted to review I captured 2 action items from our conversation today. I'll follow up with RPS about scheduling a presentation about the master facilities plan sometime in the spring. That's worth mentioning. We will also be working on a calendar for other presentations, so that this is a good time to have that conversation. Further, Mr. Hopkins will follow up with you about crossover youth and further data on that community in particular. Your next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, December 11th at 2 p.m. Right now, I have it down as Office of Children and Families to present about the Positive Youth Development Fund. Previously, we also invited or considered inviting the Richmond and Henrico Health District. There's been some discussion of pushing that to a later date. I just want to confirm that that's our plan at the moment is, again, just Office of Children and Families. Correct?
And we're going to add contract review for Salvation Army and Home Again.
Thank you. That's all.
All right, committee members, with no further business, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all for coming.